Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. We're going to be joined by Phil Perry and Matt Cassel today, and obviously, plans have been altered by the official retirement of Tom Brady. Shed a tear, New England. Shed a tear, everybody who had the opportunity to cover the guy, but also do so with a smile, because you're privileged to watch the greatest performer in team sports history. Yeah, that's what he was. I mean, you can have Michael Jordan, you can lift one team, 12 guys, 5 guys on the court at the same time. But to be able to lift a team of 53, 22 guys on the field, to inject that player into a system and see the improvement made down in Tampa Bay, well, that's only the bookend on an incredible Patriots career. So we're going to talk with Cassel and Phil Perry about everything related to Brady. Why now? What do you think the main cause was? And how come Patriots fans didn't get any love?
World champion, and there ain't nothing you can do about
it. As advertised, the big guns are in here now. Matt, we haven't gotten your perspective on Brady's retirement, even though we did start early over the weekend.
Yes.
Why is he stepping away? He's still got the goods.
He's still got the goods. You know, as a fan, you don't want to ever see him walk away, especially when he led the league in passing this year and touchdowns. Ultimately, though, we knew it was going to come to an end at some point, and it's probably something to do with family and being there and being present. And also, it's hard to motivate yourself. Look, it's hard to motivate yourself later in your career, let alone going back the grind of the season and everything that takes place. And at 40, he's turning 45 in August. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was going to be a point where he's finally said it's time. And I think that it's just finally time. Now, it's sad as a football fan, but at the end of the day, I respect his decision. And it is what it is, you know.
Phil, did he beat Father Time?
Oh, there's no question. And for Matt to sit here and say, you know, it's really hard to motivate yourself later in your career. He motivated himself for about 10 years past what is considered later in your career for, 99% of athletes everywhere. So it's unbelievable everything he's been able to accomplish. He, of course, beat Father Time. His career will never be approached, in my opinion, by anyone. And it's because of all the work and the motivation, Tom, that he had for so long and the work that he did leading up to Sundays.
We saw those postseason records that he set individually, the passing records, and it's so staggering. It's truly Ruthian in the level that he's done and exceeded what, as you pointed out, Phil, will never be approached. It's like Cy Young's 511 career wins or whatever it is. I have a theory about this that kind of germinated. Tom Brady doesn't have a chip anymore. Shoulders are chip-free.
Chip-free.
Matt? Yeah. Think about that. This is the first time he's ever been chip-free. Even in 08, 09, I'm coming back from an ACL. 2010 still continued. 2014, it was fueled by Jimmy Garoppolo. 2018, 19, and into Tampa Bay, fueled by, they don't think I can do it at this age. No chips anymore.
No chips anymore. And you know what? It's got to be refreshing for him. But that's the way that he always motivated himself. He found something that was bulletin board material or something that he could put in the back of his mind. And that was the amazing part about his approach, was every offseason. And I worked out a number of off seasons. He lived in California for a while. And it was always amazing to see his work ethic and how he approached the game. And he was diligent about making sure that he got his work in and day out. He would go in the throwing sessions, which Julian Edelman can contest to, and all these different guys that have gone worked with him. Those throwing sessions were so detail oriented, 2 hours long. It was formulated in a certain pattern of how he wanted to get better and what he wanted to do. It was all mechanically based. And so it's just amazing to see that he was able to do that year in, year out, because I've seen so many guys over the year, even including myself, that sometimes you get comfortable or you take it for granted, and you maybe life catches up with you and you're not able to put in the same time that you did early in your career. But it was never the case for him. He loved football so much, to such a degree. And I always say this, he never wanted to be great. It was always about being the greatest. And he took that approach every single time he was preparing for football, as it went into season, off season, all that stuff. And he elevated the play around him for everybody, and everybody that was there and got to see it was always in awe about how he set such a standard for everybody, and everybody had to rise to what he was presenting to the group.
And Tom, when you are chip free, it's easy for everything in your life, off the field, away from football, to pull at you. And I think that must be happening to a large extent right now too, whether it's his family, whether it's a number of these other business opportunities that we know he wants to pursue, that he made mention of. He made sure to make mention of at the end of his lengthy statement that he released today on social media. So there are other things now that maybe he'll be able to find that chip elsewhere. Maybe others are looking at his NFT projects and they don't think they'll be able to succeed because it's just Tom Brady and he's just an athlete. I doubt it, but maybe he'll find some bulletin board material somewhere else in his life.
Okay. In his statements released on Tuesday, nary a mention of the New England Patriots, which it's worth noting, but it has been more than noted on social media by Patriots fans. They are alternately upset, hurt, offended, and angry. And again, it's worth noting, I would say it's not time yet for the torches and pitchforks, but I think people have skipped right to the torches and pitchforks, Phil.
People are emotional, Tom, and we don't want to offend them any further with what we might say on this podcast, because we don't want torches and pitchforks at our places of work. But it is noteworthy. I noted it. The first thing I read, and I'm flipping through, no mention of the Patriots, But I think we do have to remember that just a couple of years ago, 2020, when he realized he wasn't going to be a member of the Patriots anymore, he released a lengthy statement about how he loves everyone on the Patriots, and the standard they were able to set as a group really meant so much to him. And so he has shared a lot of those feelings already. A lot of those are on paper. They're on the internet. You can go find them very easily, but I do get it. I do get that Patriots fans, although it is a little weird that you want acknowledgement on a day that is about Tom Brady and all that he accomplished, but I do get it that Patriots fans might be hurt a little bit.
Yeah. That
he didn't sort of doff his cap in their direction.
I mean, I get it. They all did it together. I think that there's a lot of kids who are named Brady.
A lot.
And dogs that are named Brady who are right now saying, he didn't say anything about us. But again, he's kind of on his details. And I can't imagine, especially after the way things really happened this year. I think that we talked about it on Saturday, Phil. They buried the hatchet. He and Bill did. There were no hard feelings. There was a philosophical difference, Matt. I don't think there's hard feelings. And to me, the absence of a Patriots salute, maybe there's that one-day contract where he wants to come back and resign as a Patriot. I think there's so much conversation about that right now, Matt.
Right.
That if he doesn't.
Can you believe that? If
he doesn't.
Oh, man.
Then now people, then I would say, I guess, I'm sure that Robert Kraft asked him to, and he didn't want to do it. That would hint at something, because he was pissed when he left. And he did think it could have been prevented by ownership. And he did want Bill to stick around, and he wanted Robert Kraft to intervene. If he says no thanks on that, which I could kind of maybe even see now that I think about it. Wait. You want me to be a Patriot now, but you didn't want me to be a Patriot in 2020? That could be interesting.
That would be really interesting to me, especially because 20 years of his career, right? His legacy is always going to be forever embedded as a New England Patriots. And that's just the fact of the matter. And so for him to leave it out of statement, yes, maybe, I can understand why a lot of fans are questioning that. But at the end of the day, if he doesn't come back and retire a Patriot, that would be mind blowing to me. And we'd have to get really to the insight of why he wasn't going to retire as a Patriot.
And I think it would go right to that, Phil, wouldn't you? That it would be, whoa. You didn't want to sign me to a contract. How much can you give me? 25 million for this contract? You're going to get
exactly.
Yeah. And I could also see him looking at it and saying, really, do we have to do this? This is such a dog and pony show type. Maybe he'll end up doing it, but I could certainly see him reacting that way too, which is, you guys know, I love you. I love the fans. Maybe now he'll be pressured into releasing another statement acknowledging the Patriots and the fans, because the reaction has been so strong. But he's a guy whose time is valuable to him. So he's going to fly to New England. He's going to sit down at a table with the Kraft family, and he's going to put pen to paper, and it's going to be a 15-minute thing for the cameras. And then he's going to fly back to wherever he wants to go. I don't know. I don't know if I can envision that.
Well, he does like to play it both ways. He can say, I want my privacy after having done 2 documentaries in 3 years.
Correct.
Yeah,
So
that's true. That's true.
Matt, we have you here, and Brady usurped our conversation that I did want to have about Mac Jones. Now the departure of Josh McDaniels has happened. I don't think it's going to be the kneecapping to Mac Jones' career that some people might imagine. If it was a different kind of quarterback who was more developmental and not as smart and attuned, it would be a big, big, big deal. I think it's a big deal for Mac. Your thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, I think it'll impact them in the short term, but again, it's who they bring in. Is it somebody that's going to be very familiar with the system, terminology? As long as the terminology doesn't change, he can still grow, but they've got to have somebody that's going to come in and pick up where Josh McDaniels left off, and hopefully a guy that has a relationship with Josh McDaniels, because Josh McDaniels is going to have great conversations with whoever comes in and lets them know about Mac and can tell them about the evaluation process, what they wanted to work on. And then again, it's about building that relationship, that rapport. But as long as that terminology doesn't change, as long as they can continue to push forward and grow within that system, he should be in good hands, because again, it's mentally, this kid is really strong. That's probably the strength of his game, right? And so as long as he can continue to develop those skills this offseason, and some of it is more physical than it is mental, because mentally we know he grasps it, right? But from a physical standpoint, he's got to grow with his arm strength, his ability to process even quicker than what he did this year, which was outstanding. But somebody that can come in and help facilitate that's going to be a big component to Mac Jones' growth going into year 2.
Matt, how important would it be to just reestablish the lines of communication, right? I'm sure there are some coaches who are better than that, or better at that than others, but it is going to be a different personality, whoever it is that comes in to be the offensive coordinator, whether it's somebody Mac Jones knows well, like one of the coaches who are already here and in the system, or somebody else that they bring in from outside that he hasn't really worked all that closely with in the past. Will that take some time to sort of reestablish those lines of communication, just figuring out how the other guy works once that other guy is here?
100%, because throughout my career, I had a number of different coordinators. I think once I left New England, I had 10 different coordinators in like 10 years or something like that. It was crazy. So, and there's always, that getting used to that person, understanding how he approaches day in and day out, the attention to detail, and then building that relationship and that comfort level that you have with somebody to be able to go in and say, hey, I really don't like this play. And not just running it because they put it on paper, but instead saying, I don't like this play. I'm not comfortable with it. We either need to explain it. And that person's got to be open to that conversation. That's part of the growth process too, is giving Mac Jones a voice, letting him be a leader, and not only in the locker room, but also when it comes to having a voice in terms of the game plan and how they approach it. So that's a big component of this, and a comfort level that you need to have with your coordinator if there's going to be a successful component to that.
Talking about Josh McDaniels as he takes over in Vegas, what does a new head coach need to establish first with his team?
Right. I think for me, it's the rapport and success. Respect for what your approach is. If you come in and you're trying to be, the badass and gonna put the nails to these guys early and really try to force them into, look, this is our culture, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, then you get a lot of pushback. There's a lot of veteran players that have been with different coaches, especially within that organization, but it's about understanding what your team is, how to approach it, letting your coaches coach, not being somebody that's going to have his hand into everything. And at the same time, having some leniency, not this approach that New England has. Look, it's an established culture. It's something that it's not for everybody, but at the same time, understanding the pulse of your team and leaning on those leaders and saying, hey, how do you guys like to do this? How do you like to do that? And earning that respect. And then they work for you and they buy in, because the hardest thing sometimes is getting people to buy in to this type of system that can be, mentally stressful on a lot of guys.
Phil, I think it's important that Josh goes in there, whether it's Joe Judge or Matt Patricia. Brian Flores have worked great, but that team hugely needed a cultural shift. And they had a new broom sweeps clean mentality there. You're not going to sweep guys out in Vegas, Phil. They have a pretty good team. I think guys will be on alert to say, okay, how's his bedside manner? What's he going to act like? I think it's probably pretty important for him to differentiate and somewhat divorce himself from at least the Patriots Death Star, narrative that so many people around the NFL believe exists, by being an engaging, open, happy guy who is very anti-Belichick, at least in personality and engagement. You agree?
Right. I think in terms of perception, you're right. He can want to have the things that the Patriots have had for many years here in terms of what he's looking for in his players, toughness, intelligence, the ability to execute in critical situations. He can expect those things from his players, but that perception that you're talking about, I think is something that he's going to have to steer clear of, especially because they just had success. I think this is, in some ways, it'll be more difficult, Tom, to get what you want into your program established as a culture. If you're looking at it and you want it to change, I think it's harder to change when you're coming to a team that just made the playoffs, that has a veteran quarterback who's accomplished a little bit in his career here. So it's not like it's Matt Patricia and the Lions, and we know how well that went. Matt, you know how well that went. Like, it's just a different situation. I think, Josh McDaniels is going to have to tread even more delicately than somebody like Patricia or one of these other totally rebuilding coaches would have to do.
What impact do you think being in Vegas has on a player? Because I look at that as being perhaps a hurdle that Josh is going to have to clear. The type of player you bring in has to be a mature player, and you have to be on it. And I've always felt that way about South Florida too. And I think in Vegas, you have to be, have mature and stable players whose wild oats don't need to be sown. I mean,
there's a lot of distractions for sure. I mean, and what's interesting? I went out to lunch with Marcus Mariota. He was in town just this last week, and it was interesting hearing about the organization. He said the organization, the facilities are top notch. They provide everything for you, and there's a lot of good neighborhoods. But at the same time, he did say that, like, there is constantly that big city sitting right there. And for young and mature guys that want to go out and enjoy their nightlife, with every NFL organization has, you have to guard yourself against it. And so it not only relies on the head coach, his approach, his message to the team, and about, protecting yourself against yourself, but at the same time, it's the personnel group that comes in, the player personnel that really has those conversations, make sure that they educate the players. And they've had, obviously they've had quite a few examples, unfortunately, that are the way not to go. And so it's that is something that you might have to overcome. But again, it's about your consistent approach, your consistent message from day one that you get there about what we're trying to accomplish. And it's more about the team than it is about anything else in your personal life. Hugely
challenging to Dave Ziegler, I would imagine, Tom, because they've been very open about it. Again, this press conference, Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler talking about how they want smart, tough, explosive, and can perform in critical situation types of players. That's almost the Patriots party line to a T, minus the explosive part. And the reason why I think it could be tough to kind of marry those two things up, the Patriots system with this dynamic athlete that the Davis family has always loved, is because if you want those explosive top tier athletes, but you also want the quality character guys, it's just hard to have both. If you have to almost choose one or the other. If you want the quality character guys, sometimes you're canceling off your draft board some of the guys who are the best athletes. You're
winnowing down your group. Your group is going to get smaller.
So it's going to be hard for them to build the team in the mold that we saw yesterday and still have them be this, upstanding group that they said yesterday in that press conference that they want on and off the field. It's possible, but it is going to be difficult.
Well, let's see. Unexpected Brady retirement, which kind of should have been expected, but I didn't think it was going to happen on Tuesday. We got that done. Check. We got sad Patriots fans conversed about. Check. We talked about Mac Jones and the damage done by the departure of Josh McDaniels. Check. We talked about Vegas and the problems that you might have if you're Josh McDaniels, finding players who aren't going to blow $177,000 at roulette. Check. And we also talked about Josh's tenor. I think we've hit a lot here today, guys. So we're going to put a bow on this because there's writing to be done. There's phone calls that we have to get on. And we love you very much. Fellas, thanks for hustling and getting on.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to get the group back together.
I love when we circle the wagons.
Circle the wagons.